Hi there, it's Michelle Patterson, and you are with the Real Share Daily Huddle. And today I have got some awesome news all the way around. I mean, it's not only do I have great news, but I get to share it with my very dear friend, Estrella Harrington, and her husband, Doug Harrington. And I want to give a little bit of backdrop. We've got Ian Mitchell, who you guys all know is my wellness provider, and he's my lead biochemist, a part of my entire team and my wellness program. So we're going to go ahead and talk today about what we've been doing in really going through and dealing with stage 4 cancer and what that looks like and all the different healthy options that are out there. And I also want to state that this is not a statement. Any of our guests that are sharing, they're sharing their own personal experiences, and you do want to consult with your physician, with your healthcare provider on any questions that you have. So with that, I want to say welcome to the two of you and say thank you, because you and I, Estrella, you and I have had a chance to go on a crazy life journey. For you, it's been longer these last few years.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a ride.
Yes.
So let me share with you a little bit of background. So Estrella and I had the opportunity to work together, and we had a chance, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background. She's the COO of Global Discovery Bioscience. She has more than 23 years of entrepreneurial management and operations experience in the startup development, implementation, growth of small and large companies. And it goes on from there. And what I love is the fact that you and Doug have really been able to work collectively together in both of your passions. And Doug with his eyes, because it's similar to what Eric does. And he says, did I have a choice?
Yeah, it's impossible to say no.
So Doug is a physician. He's a triple board preventative cardiologist and is a neighbor of mine, but he's in Orange County, and he's one of the premier doctors that I actually know. And I know a lot of doctors. And I love how the two of you have taken on this diagnosis, and you did it really, together, and looked at it as what's the possibilities that are being offered today on the planet that are available out there to us, and so much so that you helped me be aware of different modalities that were available out there as well. And what we're going to be talking about, for me, I have just gotten the results back from my PET scan, and I had a 5 to 10% drop in all the places that it had metastasized.
Wow, that's great.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
So I'm giddy. And I told Estrella when we talked yesterday, she says, how are you feeling? How do you feel going into this? And I said, Estrella, my gut, my core being is telling me that everything is going to be okay.
Yes.
That I am going into this, unlike the last 2 PET scans where I showed growth in the cancer. This time I'm coming in, and we've actually seen not only a drop, but also the pain in my left side. And that's how it was originally diagnosed. I was going in complaining that I had, what they said it was, Michelle, you have a pinched nerve.
Uh-huh.
And I went twice to the doctors complaining about just the side hurting, and they sent me home saying it's a pinched nerve. And it wasn't until the 3rd time that they actually biopsied a lump that was in my left breast. And then that's when, I want to say that at that time, all hell broke loose, because it went from being diagnosed to then having a stage 4 diagnosis. Really, things started happening very quickly. I had shared this with you. I went and met with 45 doctors.
Oh,
years.
Wow.
I went on this
Yeah.
crusade,
I've heard of doctor shopping, but come on.
well, partly, I think I did the shopping is because I didn't like the answers that I was. One of the answers, and I shared this with the two of you, is one of them was, Michelle, you have 90 days to live.
Yeah. Same here.
Familiar with that.
Same here.
Same
here. Ugh.
So it wasn't until, I had an opportunity to start a cannabis protocol, which that dropped my tumors 52%. And that was my experience. And I think everybody's body is different. And I think it's up to us to truly own our wellness and to ask the questions and go on this search for your wellness team family. You two have been part of my wellness team family and my journey, as I know I've been part of yours. We've cried together.
Yes.
We cried some more together.
Yeah. And we complained together.
Yeah, and I want to introduce you to Ian Mitchell, who has been just a true catalyst for me, for hope. He brought in a few other alternatives that I had not thought about, one of which was a serum introduced with methadone that I have been taking. And I just started taking that from the last PET scan, which was 4 months ago. And so I wanted you to talk about that too, because as we start comparing these notes and comparing family to family, what it is that you're doing, what am I doing, and really trying to make sense of all of this and speak in layman's terms so that we can have the conversation intelligently and make the decisions about what is going to make a difference for us. And I know for you, Estrella, is that Doug has done a really, really good job of making it your choice in the matter so that you truly own this. So I want to first start off by saying, Ian, we did it.
Yes. Yes.
It's good. We're on the road. We are definitely on the road.
Yes. Road to recovery.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And it's an interesting thing too, because again, everything is patient-centric, right? The idea is that it has to work with your specific style of doing this, because I know the oncologist who told you you have 3 months to live, and to her credit, based on what most people had seen at that point, that was kind of a reasonable assessment given the pathology.
Sure.
I obviously disagreed, and as it's been over a year, I think I bet on the right pony here. But
it's a long 90 days.
Yeah, it's been an exceedingly long 90 days. And, the idea, though, is, Michelle, you kind of own this for yourself, and you made sure that everything was in keeping with the modalities that you wanted to pursue, because you said, well, I want to do this, but I want to do this without chemo, without radiation. And so that was kind of the modus operandi from the get-go. So we approached everything, myself and the rest of the guys on the team, we all approached it that way and found what I think are some of the better therapeutics in the world to do that. And there are a lot of guys. I work with a whole team of guys in Germany that are really great. And then there's some professors that we're adjuncts with, that Professor Friesen at the Ulm University, she's brilliant and has been working on methadone for the past going on 13 years now, and her papers are phenomenal. Why everybody in oncology doesn't know them, I don't know. My guess is it probably has more to do with the fact that the financial interests aren't really terribly well served, because and Michelle, I've heard you say this, when I told you that you needed to get prescription for that, and you went out and you consulted with your physician and you got the script, you called me and said, guess how much it was? And, I kind of waited with bated breath and said $23.
Wow.
Because what you really want is you want something that can eradicate this without breaking the bank, or at least, people who are shooting for health and wellness want that. So that said, all of this was kind of in keeping with your approach, which is, tailored to who you are as a person. And, the one time that we thought after the last PET scan, when things, had not moved in the proper direction, myself and the rest of the team, we all conferred and said, it's time, we need to do focused radiation and really start ablating these things locally. you had no issue with that because your team, you kind of handpicked all of us, and we all discussed it offline because we knew what you wanted, and that was the recommendation. And when we said that, you did not blink. And luckily, about a week later, I called and said, "Hey, ixnay, we're it's not actually necessary." And that was from the process of searching out the best therapeutics for your particular approach that we could find anywhere in the world. And I think as long as you're passionate about it and you're willing to do the research, because it's out there. I mean, granted, sometimes you have to translate 87 pages of German text, but it's out there. The sources are there. And if you're willing to do the work, you'll find it. So congratulations. I am completely jazzed. Now all we need to do is just pace up a little bit. And I think we can easily do that, because the big components here are, at least for your particular protocol and that of a bunch of other people that I'm helping out as well, and advising their teams. Deuterium depleted water is a cornerstone to upregulate mitochondrial function. There well over 10,000 documented case studies, and it's a really great modality that for whatever reason people aren't really familiar with. And there's a tremendous amount of research on deuterium depleted water. There was a spinoff from UCLA, the Deuterium Depletion Center, or Center for Deuterium Depletion. Laszlo Boros and Q Collins ran. And then some of the other modalities, like I referenced Professor Friesen's research on methadone, which is brilliant. And it works in conjunction with almost every chemotherapeutic that I've seen that I'm familiar with.
Wow.
And the way that works, to kind of drill into it in plain common speak, is if you look at the wound theory of cancer, basically saying why can cancer move through other tissue types without your body's immune system being activated? Because for all intents and purposes, you're generally pushing through fascia or other organ systems, but your immune system doesn't respond. And in great part, that's most likely due to preponderance of receptors on the surface for, in the case of things that work with methadone, opioids. So tumor cells have a preponderance of opioid receptors on the cell surface. And so when you stimulate those, you actually change the way that the biochemistry functions internally as relates to a chemotherapeutic. So you slow down the calcium channel ion flow on the cell surface and the gated ion flow. And what happens is the efflux changes, meaning but the time that it takes for the chemo to get out is much longer. So it actually does a lot more damage. But your normal somatic cells through the rest of your body don't have those same receptors. There are a fair amount of them in your brain, but generally your cells don't have those receptors. So in effect, what you're doing is you're taking the camouflage off so that the chemo can have a pronounced effect, or the radiation can have a more pronounced effect. And also your innate immune system is triggered to be able to respond and see those. And the same thing happens with, as you know firsthand, Michelle, the same thing happens with cannabinoid receptors. Because just in terms of endogenous onboard receptors that your physiology maintains in all cells, you've got cannabinoid receptors, you've got opioid receptors and nicotinoid receptors. And if you stimulate all of those things, you pare down the ability of those systems to hide and obfuscate the view from your immune system. So
let's talk about that too, because I want to because you said so many great things. And first off, I just want to say thank you for just
genuinely happy to help.
I also want to say, Dr. Harrington, thank you for your courage, because it's individuals like yourself that are responding to moms like us, where Estrella and we got together and we've done, some of the largest projects, on the planet. California Women's Conference, Garda. I mean, we've done some major, major, major stuff together. And so when she called me and told me about her diagnosis and having stage 4 cancer, we both were like, all right, no, that not happen.
Not gonna roll over.
You're not gonna roll over. And we started talking about what is available for healthy options that are on the planet that can work in collaboration like we were doing. I mean, that's in essence what's been happening is I brought in, 180 years of experience with doctors. Doug, you were awesome because you're like, just call. Estrella kept saying, do you want to talk to Doug? Do you want to? I had resources and individuals that I could go to that I trusted as a trusted advisor. So when Ian talked earlier about how I had the last, 2 PET scans showed growth. And when I went to this team and we recorded the call and we had all the doctors on Zoom, and they said to me, Michelle, unanimously, we feel like this next step is to do radiation. Exactly what you're doing with the cannabis protocol, but that we feel at this time that you should be doing a targeted radiation. And you referred to it as an eraser on my spine. And that's how it would be. And I didn't cry. I didn't get upset. I was like, you know what? All right, let's do this. Because I had worked on my body for 9 months. I had been getting my immune system totally ready, totally prepared, loving on it. And it was time. And then that's when Ian actually jumped out. This is, a week later, my husband and I were together and we were having lunch, and I put Ian on speaker, and he says, you know what? I have a solution. I've been practicing and doing your real share. I've been comparing your log with my other patient's log, and I'm seeing some opportunities here to introduce you to a treatment that's being done out of Germany. And right away, I got onto it, and I called you. Remember that, Ian? I called you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel good. I know this.
Actually, yeah, it was a well-timed call. It was a very well-timed call. It was a Sunday morning at about 10:45. Yeah.
So you guys have been, Estrella, talk to me about what you've been going through, because the similarities too with cannabis, and so share with me the diagnosis and the process that you have gone through.
So I'm the same like you. I've been complaining that I am tired. I don't have energy. But of course, everybody say, you and me, we work like mad. So I say, Estrella, rest. I say, okay. So I start resting a little bit. And then I start taking off on Saturday, Sunday. And then people can see that I am not the same. And so for about a year, but all my blood work looks normal. Everything looks okay.
So I'm also.
And then so I don't know what to do. I keep telling my husband, I just not feeling good. There's something really, really wrong with me. So he finally decided to take my stool sample, send it to Australia. So they have a DNA.
It's always been this way. I mean, living with a doctor, and I've asked the same question of Ian. Living with a healthcare professional, that's not a common question. Like, Estrella, can you take this stool sample?
Yeah, I know.
Right? I don't know.
And send it all the way to Australia. But because they have what they call it smart DNA, and they look at all possibilities, and they are one of Dr. Margie Smith. She's one of the amazing doctor. I would like to introduce you to meet with her someday. I mean, it was just an amazing thing that you can see. And then she came back to me and to Doug right away, and she said, I'm so sorry, Doug, can you please look at check her out? She might have cancer or colitis. And we're like, I was like, I might have cancer. And he goes, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, all the numbers looks okay. Everything looks fine. I'm just not feeling good. So I'm like, and I'm getting skinnier and skinnier. But the problem during that time also, I was dieting. And I cut down on sugar. So I'm like, yeah, this diet really worked. Totally wrong. I was like, yeah, cut down sugar. You're good. You shrink right away.
How soon did you get the results back? So you sent it off to Australia. You then were told that you have cancer.
I might have cancer about a week or so right after they receive it. And she called Doug right away. And then I think that can explain a little bit more what that test is all about. But that precipitated the urgency for me to get tested. Unfortunately, because of my age, I'm not in the range that, the insurance will cover it. So it was really hard for me to get a colonoscopy. And then so because I can't get a colonoscopy, I start going to my gynecologist. And I said, I'm complaining. I'm not feeling good. There's something wrong. Something wrong with me, because I think a lot of people, especially for us women, our primary care physician are the gynecologist. And then she looked at me and he looked at me, and also Doug, he talked to Doug and said, okay, I'm going to recommend you to do a colonoscopy because, you're losing weight, all these different things. And then you have a problem with your stomach, because I have a stomach problem. I'm like constipated all the time. And also, it was just like, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And then at that time also, because after the Australia diagnosis, that gave me medication for antibiotic, because I have like certain bacteria that is
No, that's okay. I just had to take that call.
So what is that test? What did she say? What do
so
I
she
have?
had a stool microbiome test, and she had dysbiosis, but it was very specific, meaning that the kind of bacteria that were in her gut, it's called Fusobacterium necrophorum and varium, and 92% of cancer patients have that species in predominance. So that was a huge clue right there, even with everything else being normal. And it just goes to show that, inflammation in the gut allows, there's got to be some sort of feedback mechanism here that allows these cancers to prosper and go crazy in there with the wrong kind of bacteria there. So that was our entree into forcing them to do her endoscopy.
Yeah, but the colonoscopy, when we call in, it was during Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, it was Memorial Day weekend, and so I can't get in, and they say, "Oh, you can get in 2 more months from now." We're like, "No," and at that time, I was like, he was like getting mad, so he's trying to push me to get my colonoscopy. And then at that time, I
actually went out and bought a camera and was going to do it myself. One of those,
disclaimer before anybody listens. Hence my
we like to take matters into our own hands here.
But I was so blessed, and then so glad, because at that night after I met my doctor, and after getting rejected to get a colonoscopy until 2 months later, my friend, we have a meeting with my friend, our friend Dr. Bahar, and then we talked to her, and she looked at me and said, because we haven't seen each other for a year, we're all so busy, so it's really hard. So we actually make an appointment a year in advance to meet. So I said, I am not going to cancel my meeting, even though I feel like, I just can't do this anymore. But then she saw me and she said, Estrella, can I ask you, do you lose weight by choice or, or something? I say, well, I was dieting, but this one is not by choice. There's something wrong with me, but I cannot get an appointment. So she's actually one of the medical director for Mission. Monarch.
Mm-hmm.
And then she asked me, do you have HMO? I said, no, I have a PPO. I say, what's the problem with that? I have no idea. I said, so she actually make a phone call, and I get in right away on Tuesday. And so we're like, okay, let's get in, let's look what it is. And then what happened?
It was obviously cancer. She had believe it or not, a 14-centimeter tumor at the colorectal verge.
Whoa.
And but it looked like it might actually be resectable because it was long and inside, and but that was not to be, because then the CAT scans and the MRI started coming back, and first there were some lymph nodes, then it's liver, then it's lung. She had it everywhere, and that's when the same thing that happened to Michelle is, well, 3 months is probably a good timeline here, and they actually didn't want to treat her because she was less than 90 pounds, and
I have a picture I'll show you guys.
And they didn't think that she could tolerate any therapy. So this is an area where cancer patients are frequently mismanaged, which is on the nutrition side. And so what we did is we just put her on it was predominantly a plant-based program. And it's low in sugar, higher in fats, because cancer cells like sugar. They don't like fat. And we got her weight up, and while we were doing this, I work with all kinds of naturopaths, chiropractors, researchers all over the place, biochemists, and what I learned was that even as a physician, we had multiple people coming up saying, "Oh, you got to go see this doctor. They do this. See this doctor. They do this." And I can't imagine what it's like for a layperson to go through this, because the amount of garbage that you hear, if somebody favors radiation, you're going to get radiation therapy. If somebody favors chemo, you're going to get chemo. And they're not really looking at the patient. So we started researching it, and I have a friend called the Natural Doctor in London, and he doesn't actually give chemo to patients. What he does is he supports their immune system and their natural cells during standard chemotherapy, and his patients do really well. And he has a protocol. It's largely from Germany, of course. And so we obtained some of those components, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's things like L-carnosine, which basically makes tumor cells more sensitive to chemotherapy, and kind of brings those tumor stem cells out of hiding. And then I started adding to it, things like squalene and mushroom extracts that help the immune system and protect your normal cells. And then the one thing that we did that was unique, and this was based on looking at some research papers, which is very similar to what Michelle did, is we had a Chinese friend. He's a biochemist, and he and I had a debate about putting her on high-dose CBD. And so I relented and I had to obtain a large amount of CBD, because he was talking about 6 grams a day. Okay.
Wow.
That's a very high dose.
That is a very high dose.
And I had to learn how to extract it as pure crystalline CBD. But we did something else that was more of an accident that worked probably the most important thing. And that was, we had a friend who had stage 4 cancer 20 years ago and survived. And he decided that no cancer patient should have to go through what he did. So he developed a strain of marijuana that's designed to not make you as dopey, but it stimulates your appetite, takes away the pain and the nausea. And so I actually developed a method for doing a whole plant extract. Okay. And the reason that's important is because pure CBD and THC have some activity, but it turns out that the whole plant extract is significantly more potent, and it facilitates standard therapy dramatically. And I did that by accident.
Because it's okay because we met with Dr. Sanchez.
Yeah. So and to go along with that, one of the people that 20 years ago was a postdoc fellow at UCI has spent the last 20 years studying the effect of CBD, THC, whole plant extracts of hemp and marijuana on cancer. And this lovely lady here, I had to give a talk at the European Society of Cardiology in Paris. And she said, "We're going to go visit Dr. Sanchez in Spain." And I said, "No, we're going to go home because you're not feeling good. You need to get home." And she said, "No, we're going there." So of course.
Well, he said that.
You compromised.
Yeah. There's this picture of this guy that won an argument with his wife, and he's on a cot out in the driveway. If you know what I mean. So anyway, we got on a train and took a 12-hour ride.
This Doug,
What?
Harrington didn't even know that he was going to be on the podcast. It was like,
yeah, thank you.
I'm like, where's Doug?
Right here.
So anyway, we get to Madrid, and I say, "Do you have an appointment?" And she says,
"No."
So we go to the university. Complutense University is huge. It's giant. And she's in a wheelchair at the time because she's tired. And so we get the cab driver to drop us off at one side of the university, which is the wrong side.
Which is medical center.
The medical
she's
center.
Actually at the biochemist center.
She's actually in the molecular biology section. So we had to go through 6 buildings to find where she was. And we got there.
The door was locked.
The door was locked. And so
But somebody came out and we just sneak in.
Somebody came out and they said, "Oh, hi, I'm Dr. Harrington from UCI. I'm here to see Dr. Sanchez." And they go, "Okay." So we go and we wait for her. She shows up and
no appointment.
No appointment. And she said the reason she doesn't make appointments is she gets so many wackos that come in there.
Yeah,
and
she doesn't want to talk to people.
She said, she said, "I don't want people to just do cannabinoids by themselves. You need to do this in conjunction with other things. Chemotherapy or standard therapy.
Or standard therapy, yeah."
So when she heard her story, we ended up keeping her there until she was late for a lecture. And it was a real education. And she told me that by accident, I had done the right thing because all of her research is showing that the whole plant extract is significantly more effective than either of those purified components alone. And it's the terpenes and the polyphenols and all those things you hear about, all the
You mean nature actually got it right? Shocking.
Yeah. So anyway.
A couple billion years and it cracked the code.
Yeah.
So remember.
I was amazed too at just the resistance of people that I was talking to, and you and I spoke about this, Eric and I came over and I was so thankful because right away, when you reached out, it was about talking about cannabis. And then I was able to share with you, I've also been diagnosed with stage 4. And all of a sudden we just started talking about these resources and how we could put the pieces together and truly figure out this puzzle.
Yeah.
And I love that because you had resistance from the peer team that you have been interacting with, and was very much of like, no, this is not what we need to do. And I know Estrella, she's like me, we're not quiet at all.
Oh boy, you got that right.
It was like, well, no, I don't understand. Like, why don't we have this?
Yes.
Why don't we have these healthy options? I don't want to wait. I think that I should have this. I think that my friend Estrella should have this. And that was the mindset that you had. Both of you guys, I and Doug had.
Well, the best part of the story is she was scheduled for 6 courses of Fulfox, which is fairly toxic. She was scheduled for 12. 12, yeah. And we didn't tell my colleague that I was putting her on this alternative protocol at the same time.
We don't want to make him scared.
And because he had an NIH grant, and at the time, if you started it and they had NIH grants, they had to chart it, and then they could lose their grant because it was not legal at the time for people with NIH grants. So he started her on the protocol. She had CEAs through the ceilings, 19-9s through the ceiling, the big tumor.
7,019-9, is it?
Yeah. And so at the same time, we put her on this protocol, and 6 courses into it, she's gaining weight, looking great. And they decided to do an MRI and a CT scan, and they did. And the lymph nodes were normal. The tumor in the liver, there were 2 small spots where there used to be 3 giant spots. And they couldn't see the tumor in her colon. There was no tumor signal. And so they didn't believe it. So they scheduled her for a colonoscopy, and they went in there, and I came in to the recovery room, and the surgeon, who's a really good friend of ours, he's one of the top surgeons. He looked really perplexed, and I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad news. I said, did you get me a biopsy? Because I cultured the original tumor to test its sensitivity to various 60 different combinations. And I was going to do the same thing here. He looked at me, he said, Doug, there was nothing there. Nothing there. That gone. 14 centimeter tumor is completely gone.
Ooh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And they
well done.
Yeah,
he was shocked. He can't talk. He just like looking at me, staring at me, and I was looking at him, and then he caught himself. He goes, I said, is it bad? And then I go, it's like, because I was like, he was just staring at me. I'm like, oh, this is bad news or what is it? And he goes, no, it's actually good news. It's like, apparently whatever they see in the scan was only a scar tissue.
So
14 centimeter gone.
So Michelle and her are like two peas in a pod, you know. From my perspective, the whole issue was attitude. They didn't just go, "Oh my God, I'm going to die. I've got cancer."
Yeah.
They did exactly what you said, which is, what can we do here to make this better? You know, what are the options? They did exactly what you said. They didn't. The key thing is to not roll over and give in to the fear. You know what I mean?
And
That's the key.
then, like Michelle always said, you know, I talk to her, she talks to me, and we're surrounded by wonderful, beautiful friends of ours that we can cry together, we pray together. I mean, there's days that we're up and down, but the community that help us actually give our strength to keep on going, because every day is like, oh my God, you know, I mean, going through chemotherapy. And then on top of that, the CBD is also not easy because it's a high dose. And just going through that in your body and having the support that tell you it's okay, continue on, go for it, you know, because there's days that you're feeling down. I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. But then having that support, say, you can do it, let's continue, one more day. And so that really helped. And I was scheduled for 12. I only have 6 chemotherapy.
Yeah, and then she went on maintenance. But the thing that we did too, Michelle, which I think you'll appreciate, is that we never let her be alone in there. I just stepped off camera here a moment ago to argue with the infusion center.
Because they don't want you to get in?
They don't want me to go in with her. But we used to have essentially a party there. We'd bring in the kids and
the friends.
And we'd have coffee from cans, and we'd all, and the nurses would come over and pray on the medicine with us. You know, it was like amazing. And I think that's important, because if you go in there like, oh my, this is ominous, this is horrible, you know, you see people that just look so unhappy. And
sometimes when we go there and we see people all by themselves, you know, and then some people they are also grim. And then, of course, leave it to him. He will talk to them. So at least we have some friends. And then, but it's just, I mean, giving, going through the chemotherapy, being in that room with everybody that is getting chemotherapy is already very depressing. And then knowing after this, you're going to feel really, really bad. So it was just like, but one thing that, I mean, UCI was amazing. They were very supportive, and the nurses there are just amazing. And so it was, I mean, it's really important to have that support together.
It really is. And I remember seeing you. I mean, when we met, you were just half of you. I mean, it was scary for me to see my friends, you know, not looking so good. And it was all happening at the same time. And then I really feel like the two of you came together as this partnership. And it was like, okay, you know, this is what we need to do. And you communicated what you needed.
Yeah.
You didn't roll over like Doug talked about. I mean, you really said, hey, this is what I need. I don't feel good with this. I need this. And it was just a beautiful, I feel, watching the two of you work together. What a beautiful example for your kids. In how, you know, we all have things that happen in life, and to walk in and have the diagnosis of stage 4, I mean, that's intense. And
I remember watching the two of you in the parking lot at Barnes and Noble before we went in there. Do you remember you guys had
with Janine Bernstein?
Yeah, with Janine Bernstein, and it was crazy because you were talking about, you know, CBD and I remember I was thinking, wow, that's not very much, but you got a nice effect from it. You know, it was very impressive.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to Joe Aaron, who is with MJ's, and I went on this cannabis protocol. I'm still taking it. You know, we've looked at doing some different things, but it's really been a compliment to my overall wellness plan. And I think, to your point about attitude, is that if you are going in feeling however you're feeling, that's going to be the result. If you go in feeling like, you know, this is not going to work, it's not going to happen. I've been very, very particular about everything that goes into my body, whether it's food, whether it's a treatment, whether it's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching it very, very closely, and then finding out how many individuals that I was allowing into my life that were toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that they didn't love me. It was that they were fearful of their immortality. They
Mm-hmm.
were afraid. And it's just like, I don't know how to deal with this. And they would then engulf their fear tactics. One thing that really came up, and with this diagnosis, and when I was told again, 90 days, if you don't do chemo and you do a cannabis protocol only, you will die in 90
Mhm.
days. And the individual, she goes, I go, I'm recording this, right?
They're going to hear this again at some
What
point.
you want to be telling me? Is that what you want to be saying?
Yeah.
And oh yeah. And that was the recording. And come to find out that there was back pay from the treatments that I would go through for chemo treatments, is that instead of getting paid 10%, she was actually getting paid 30%.
Wow.
She was enticed to build up this business, and it was a really, really crushing day. I came home, my husband and I came home, and we're just like, wow, that's the system that's set up. No wonder why we have a broken healthcare system.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, the thing that's key here is that you both are not, you're definitely not going to roll over. There's no question in my mind. It's just, watch out, docs.
Doctor, I want to know your protocol too,
Yeah.
because I had my surgery for my liver dissection. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a liver resection in December for cure. In December.
In December.
Yeah, in December. Michelle.
So this is the key. So what my diagnosis in writing, there is no known cure. So, but by December of last year, when they look at all my scans and everything, and then they say, we're going for a cure. I'm like, what? Did I just hear what? So they're actually going for a cure. So
12 hours on the operating table. They took out 2/3 of her liver, and she's doing fine, although there is a lesion at the resection margin. We're not sure what it is right now.
So what happened is I supposed to get surgery in February, yeah?
No, you were supposed to get surgery in October.
Oh, no, October. I pushed, but after the liver. After the liver.
Oh,
it's
after the
right
liver,
after,
yeah. Yeah, after the liver, she was supposed to have her colon resected, but because of this lesion on the liver, they want to give her some Avastin for a while. It's a biological.
Yeah, so what happened is where they were aiming for cure, but then in December was my liver surgery. So January they were monitoring me to make sure that because it's such a long, tough what do you call that?
Surgery, and she couldn't have any therapy post
Yeah.
that, so she healed up.
Yeah, so they want me to heal and be stronger before I go to another surgery for my colon and my lymph node, because they're still worried about the tumor stem cell, even though there is no more tumor activity, but you don't know about the tumor stem cell. And then I was supposed to schedule for surgery February or March, but then with all these commotions, everything get pushed. And then during that time, they put me back on maintenance chemo just in case they don't want surprises. So I just take the maintenance chemo. And
Well,
I kind of slow down on the CBD and THC. I lower it.
Right.
Because we kind of stop a little bit. We're thinking, okay, maybe I don't need it anymore. But then suddenly
her CEA started to go back.
To double.
Doubled in 2 months, each month. And so they wanted to put her on full-blown chemo. So I put her back on our protocol, which
back to the CBD.
She was resistant to. And for 2 consecutive 3-week periods, the CEA stopped and actually went down. And so when we went back in to see the oncologist, he said, well, I guess we don't need to go on full chemo. We'll just put her on the biological and leave it at that. So.
Well, and especially with you, Doug, being able to have the conversation and talk, doctor to doctor, half the stuff that Ian says, I'm like, I don't even know what you said, but
Sorry.
I know the feeling. I'm around Indonesians all the time. I have no idea what they're saying. I just hear my name occasionally. But you know, the trouble is that our oncologist goes, "Are you doing something?"
No.
No. I don't
But
wanna-
he knows because I mean, the tumor board recommended me to have a back to full chemo because they have to postpone still my surgery, and then they don't want to do surgery, even though my surgeon like was thinking lobbying, because he have the experience that it looks like a lesion, but it's ended up a scar tissue. But then my doctor, I mean, he's a great oncologist,
He is, he's
and
good.
then he's awesome, and Dr. Zell, and so I mean, he watches me because he saw that instead of the tumor doubling, the tumor marker double, it just stopped, like literally stop on its track. Before it was every 2 weeks it goes from 3 to 7 to 14 to it's like whoa, every 2 weeks, and it's just starting to go up, and it was very scary. I was really scared at that time, and because I'm like, okay, is this a recurrence or what is that?
Yeah, well, I think what happened is at the resection margin, there was a little micromet there that they couldn't see. And I think when the liver recovers, like unlike other organs, the liver regenerates. When it does, it spits out all these growth factors, and anything nearby gets excited and says, "Hey, I'm going to get big too." But the thing is, it's hard to tell whether it was scar from the surgery because that was right near the margin. So, but I think the cool thing here is that you guys talk to each other, and that's really important because we made a decision. Some people are afraid to even admit they're sick, and she's got stage 4 cancer. Yeah, we're dealing with it. No big deal. Well,
we talk about it.
We talk about it to everybody, and at the same time, 2 or 3 of our other friends were diagnosed with various types of cancers. So it's just it's a little.
We share with some of them, but we let them also consult with. They have to consult with their doctor, and some of them follow what we did, and some of them don't. And during this period of time, I lost 4 other friends 2 years ago.
And how many friends of ours? I mean, I'm getting into double digits.
Yeah.
There's a day that goes by now that I don't get a phone call, a text, somebody's messaging me through Facebook. And I feel so compelled. I mean, I do this all just literally because I have information to share. And I watched my grandmother pass away horrifically with cancer. She had stage 4 and it went fast within months. Had put her on so much medication that she was comatose. I mean, she wasn't even coherent in her final days. We couldn't even have a conversation with her at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's
so the other thing that we've been doing is you talked about methadone, repurposing it. Mm-hmm. What's really fascinating is that statins, forget the cardiac protection, they are significantly more effective in all types of cancer at reducing mortality and morbidity. And it's felt to be due to this different pathway called Rho, where they decrease inflammation. Because a continued inflammation, like you were talking about these cancer cells getting through tissue.
Yeah.
That continued inflammation is not good. And they help with that. So we have one of the OBs that I know, she has ovarian cancer, and she put herself on lactoferrin and statins and a few other things in conjunction with her other therapy, and she's doing really well. She had stage 3, I think.
Yeah, that makes a tremendous difference. That's one of the cornerstones that you actually have to knock out, is if you can't take out inflammatory response, you're much pickled, because it sets up, you were referring to, the kind of the microbiome and kind of the correlation that people are starting to make between things like dysbiosis and cancer progression. And a lot of that is just inflammatory in nature. NIH says over 80% of all of the recurring troubles that everybody has, it's due to inflammation. I think it's very accurate, and if statins are effectively, derivatives of natural things originally, like red rice yeast. That's a statin analog.
Yeah.
And
lovastatin. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a good thing. It doesn't actually shock me, but I would posit, knowing a fair amount about this, having spent a lot of time doing cytokine research, months and months and months, doing clinical trials assessing cytokines, that there are things that are far better for you in terms of anti-inflammatory response, but that will not destroy cholesterol, because since, a good chunk of your brain is made of cholesterol, the people I know that do statins end up with a bit of brain fog. And for people in my profession and related professions, having a fuzzy edge really isn't great. You want to be very astute and very sharp all the time.
Huh?
I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Greg Anquist, who's my oncologist, who's part of my wellness team family. And my whole family was on the phone with him earlier today. And of course, Ian is brought up and all of these doctors, but he said something very, very kind to me. And he said, I wish more of my patients were like you, Michelle. And that is really going after it. And I knew based on your attitude, I knew based on how you were approaching the situation, was that you were going to find it. You were going to go out there, you were going to be vulnerable, and you were going to ask. And, everybody who meets me, Estrella, it was like, you know what? We are not going to be quiet.
Yeah.
We're not going to rest.
Yes.
Everybody has these healthy options.
Yes.
Accessible. It is a human rights issue.
Yes.
And it is.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think also you're lucky because you can gather all the doctors and have all the doctors to talk together. I'm lucky because I have him, because all my doctors don't talk to each other. But somebody needs to take all those information, because I have no idea, and we're already sick. How are you gonna, decipher all this? Like he said, overload of information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how does somebody get through it? Honestly.
Exactly.
It's amazing to me that, that's why these people that put themselves in the hands of people who probably just want to go through the routine and not really look at options for them. That's disturbing. We've been lucky that, like you, that we found people who are more open, And
Well, Doug, think about the pushback anybody gets when they try and deviate from standard of care.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're absolutely right. We've had people that we've made recommendations to, and they go and ask their oncologist to go, absolutely not. Absolutely.
And they did not make it.
And they didn't make it. Yeah.
They didn't make it. And the people that so far right now was doing the same thing like we do, Michelle, and they ask questions, they're not giving up, and they're like, because we all have different cancer, they're still alive, even though not a stage 4. Right. So we have another person that keep on growing, and then so he's doing so much better. And even the doctors say, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep on doing it.
So what would you tell somebody as we come up to the last couple minutes, before we end, which, by the way, we actually end with dancing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to create my own protocol, it's going to include always is dancing. I believe that problems can be solved with a good old-fashioned dance-off. And
I always do the robot, so.
I'm a chair dancer.
What would you say to somebody who is just being diagnosed or having a WTF moment, and they need a wellness team family? And we've definitely made it accessible. The real share. That's what this is about. Is we're just going to keep sharing information until we figure it out. And that's it. That's the name of the game. So what would you share to somebody who's just embarking on this experience?
That there is cure out there.
There's hope.
There's hope. And there's there's so many things that you can do, and ask questions. Don't do this alone. You can't do it alone. Even the family, the family is shocked. My whole family was pretty shocked. But having the community, like, your friends and family, and like you said, the real share, that can prop you up, that can think while you can't think, that can, help you where you're feeling hopeless or helpless, is very important to have that.
I love that can think, when you can't think, because you are in a state of flight and fright. I mean, your whole life is flashing by you where you're stage 4. And then just in case you didn't get the message, you have a doctor coming in saying, oh, you have 90 days. I mean,
always really encouraging.
You have to think about that. I think that it should be prohibited. I don't think.
I do too. Yeah.
Oh, I have a pact with him and with all my friends. And then one of my friends also was very nice to me, because they say testimony is good because it will lift up your spirit, it will give you hope. But I started looking at the testimony. I'm like, this is pretty depressing. I can't do this. And then once you get into depression, because you're already scared anyway, it's hard to come back up. So we decided, okay, so he said, I'm going to look at all the testimony. I'm going to look through it, and I'll just give you the good one. And that was really sweet, because then I don't look at the scary one. I just look at all the good one, and really helped me, because listening for somebody else, what they've been through, oh yeah, there's hope here. And it was just, and then I have a pact with him. If it's bad, don't tell me. I don't want to know. You can know, not me. I just keep on going.
I have to hold all the bad stuff in.
Well, and I like that. And I want to compliment you too, both of you, on being not only great doctors, but also just great husbands. I'm so grateful for Eric. It has made our 25-year relationship even more profound and more impactful, because I didn't think that we could love each other as much as we love each other as going through this scenario. I mean, it's been...
It's definitely not business as usual.
No, it hasn't. And thank you for being my friend and being part of my wellness team family. I'm honored to be a part of your wellness team family.
I'm honored too. We're honored.
Totally.
Thank you for having us.
We've got some fun ahead of us. I don't look at it as work. I think it's like Doug said, is we're spreading hope, and that's what we represent, and so that we can alleviate despair. So
I like that.
That's a good
Very
one.
nice.
You should tag that. Alleviate despair. Oh.